Hello, team, and welcome to your bureaucracy. I'm your host, Emily Gross, and I am so excited today because we have Sarah and Albert, and they are so cool because they are from Victory Fund, which is an incredible organization, and we're going to be talking all about all the legislative attacks on the LGBT, oh my God, holy shit, LGBTQ community. All right. Also important, but can't say it for shit. But anyways, I'm going to let them introduce yourselves. Sarah, Albert, say hello to the team.
My name is Sarah LeDonne. I'm the Senior Communications and Marketing Manager here at LGBTQ Victory Fund, and then at our partner organization, LGBTQ Victory Institute. So PAC versus nonprofit.
Cool.
Hi, everyone. I'm Albert. I am the press secretary at LGBTQ Victory Fund, working closely with Sarah. Excited to be here. Thanks for having us, Emily.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Why don't you tell us a little bit about all the cool stuff that Victory Fund does?
So we are one of the few, if not the only, national organizations working to elect strictly LGBTQ candidates. So we put candidates through a pretty rigorous endorsement process. You've got to be LGBTQ to get our endorsement. You have to be pro-choice in some way, shape, or form. And you have to commit to not doing harm to the trans community. So we've endorsed about 200 candidates so far this cycle.
Awesome.
It's only March. That's a lot of candidates.
Oh my God. I didn't even realize
super
that.
excited.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, only March.
Yeah,
Feels
I don't,
longer.
time doesn't exist anymore. I don't know about you guys.
Right? Especially in COVID. So yeah, that's a Victory Fund in a nutshell.
Awesome. And so today we're going to be talking, once again, this podcast is supposed to be fun, but all the topics are kind of bummers because we're talking about all the attacks and all the legislation that is harming the LGBTQ community. It has been rampant the past couple of years. It is so important that we talk about what's going on, especially, I don't know if you've seen the news cycle, but in Florida, there's been like the Don't Say Gay bill. There's been anti-trans legislation in Texas. There's so much going on that is doing so much harm. And I think it's really important that we talk about it and people can educate themselves and see what the fuck is happening. So, guys, talk to us. Please elaborate on there's been such an increase in anti-LGBTQ legislation and especially feels like over the past couple of years. Do you have some information on that?
Yeah. So definitely a bummer of a topic. In 2021, there were over 250 bills introduced in state legislatures aimed at restricting LGBTQ rights in various forms. Over 100 of those bills were particularly about trans rights and trans issues. And then according to GLAAD, there have been 195 state bills introduced this year that discriminate against LGBTQ people. 104 of those particularly target trans youth, a surge of anti-LGBTQ policy that's being passed, particularly targeting schools and school policy. 77 of those total bills ban classroom conversations or books about LGBTQ people, kind of under this guise of parental rights. That's basically Florida's Don't Say Gay bill.
Gotcha.
So these are really big numbers. It's truly unfortunate. These bills never really go away. They kind of just take new forms every year. Many of them are what we call zombie bills, which, just like you've seen in the movies, it's a piece of bill that just keeps rising from the dead, cobbled together by past legislative attempts. There's an anti-trans bill in Kansas right now that is basically just bits and pieces of other bills pulled together that they failed to pass in the past. Okay. So many of the legislators introducing these bills have introduced various versions, maybe the same thing in the past. They just keep trying and trying and trying again.
For being anti-trans, they do sound like Transformers. So just putting that out there, okay? Maybe they should let it be.
If only.
Right. Oh.
The Decepticons in new form, if you will.
Literally. Oh my God. All right. So why is this happening? It feels like it's been like kind of an exponential rise of these bills. Is there any reason why this has just been so rampant lately, or has it always been going on and now just the news is focusing on it?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. There's definitely an increased focus on it, thankfully. I mean, when you see the response to that people have had to the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida and how outraged people are, particularly students, there were massive walkouts organized and participated with students participating in. In Florida, yeah, there's definitely a renewed attention to it, but these bills have, again, always been there. One thing that we definitely know for sure, more and more LGBTQ people are stepping up and running for office, and they're doing so at higher levels than they've ever done before. We released a report a couple weeks ago called Queer in Congress, which shows that more LGBTQ people are running for the U.S. Congress than ever before.
That's so cool. That's so
yeah,
exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of like a real ray of sunshine in all these things. Another ray, days after Abbott issued his order in Texas criminalizing pro-trans healthcare and calling gender-affirming healthcare child abuse, a record number of LGBTQ candidates in Texas won their races. 27
awesome.
of them won out. Yeah, it's
That's
great.
like a sucker punch to his face. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Right as he's just trying to legislate people out of existence, there they are again.
So stupid.
So yeah, for the first time in history, over 1,000 out people are serving. So in many cases, you have a homophobe sitting on a city council, sitting in a legislature, who have been able to kind of introduce these bills over and over again, never have to meet someone LGBTQ.
Right.
And now for the first time, they're looking at a trans person in the legislature. They're looking at an LGBTQ person. It is hard to say sometimes. It is. And I say that every day, multiple times a day.
The minute you're like on pressure, you just like words don't work anymore. It's just all
what am I doing? So you've got these homophobes sitting, looking at these LGBTQ people, having to deal with them, having to work with them, and you know that's just going to be driving them insane, right? Because they just want to introduce their bills and go home. Right. And then finally, there's this huge, I don't even want to call it a movement, because it's a coordinated group of a certain number of people, many of them high up figures on the extreme religious right, who just hate LGBTQ people for whatever reason. They say it's biblical. Plenty of people are religious and manage to not be bigots.
Yeah. Also,
so
the
they give
Bible,
rest of
picking and choosing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of blame on the Bible. So they're putting a lot of money into these particular legislators who are introducing these bills. We've seen similar bills in Ghana. We just saw one pass in Guatemala.
Okay.
That it's roughly the same language. It's the same type of attacks. So they're basically doing everything they can to see if they can force these bills in front of the Supreme Court.
Gotcha.
And I think they're rolling the dice and seeing if the Supreme Court will be helpful to them in this moment. And we'll see if those tactics pay off.
I would
everybody take a drink with that one.
Unfortunately not bet on it going well. So
yeah. Not going well.
yeah. Moral of the story is these podcasts just make you want to drink, but in a healthy, responsible way. Let's dive into what some of these bills are saying. Like I mentioned previously, it's big ones kind of going through news right now is don't say gay bill in Florida. And then also Governor Abbott being a stupid butt face and saying that gender affirming care for youth is on par with child abuse. So let's dive into these bills. What are they saying? And let's dive into why they're so harmful.
Sure. Let's start with the don't say gay bills, because those, to your point, have been really prominent in the news cycle. And then also, unfortunately, it's going to continue to happen. On Tuesday, Georgia introduced its own version of a don't say gay bill. So to Sarah's point earlier, these are zombie bills because they keep getting reintroduced in these specific states, but also there's a ripple effect. Once folks see, oh, this legislation's moving forward in Idaho, and then it moves forward in Florida, and then Georgia decides to introduce their own. And so in the don't say gay bills, it's banning any kind of conversations about sexual orientation and gender identity in the classroom. And, that is not just talking about sexuality. Like that includes if a student has gay parents, you're not supposed to talk about their parents in the classroom. And it means like if there's a gay teacher, they're not allowed to talk about their sexual orientation or gender identity in the classroom. So just basic parts of our everyday lives are just erased from the entire situation. And so, it's really hard. Like, how are you going to sit down with your kid, tell them, hey, don't talk about your family in the classroom? And it's also ridiculous because, we talk about straight couples and straight families all the time. And no one's saying, oh, straight people are grooming kids to be heterosexual. I've never once heard that
They
one.
should say that.
And it's the same thing.
Totally. Yeah. That's
Ridiculous.
so upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just to add to that a little bit, we're definitely seeing the weaponization of school systems in general. You know, throughout the pandemic, we had people losing their minds over mask mandates, keeping kids at home during the pandemic, and that has absolutely evolved into attacking school curriculums around LGBTQ kids, freaking out over critical race theory.
Right.
God knows if I would love to see a couple senators define critical race theory accurately. I think that would be a fun
hilarious.
game. Right?
Yeah.
The extreme right has definitely realized they can galvanize their base by really co-opting this discussion, pretending they care about women's issues, pretending they care about these parental rights bills, and using it as an excuse to gin up their base and get them all excited and all angry before the midterms. They're just desperately trying to turn out their voters using any means possible. And in this case, they're just really leaning into LGBTQ stereotypes and just spreading as much disinformation as they can while they do it. So everybody goes crazy during the midterms. And that's what we're seeing
insane.
now.
That's so upsetting. It's just so stupid. I don't know, like focus on something else, like dandelions growing in your lawn or something. Like there's so many better things to put your energy into to trying to eradicate rather than people's lives. You know?
Yep.
Right? Like if we had this much focus on parental leave or
Like healthcare.
funding education, we would be there. One of our elected officials who's in Florida had a great tweet the other day that was like, people tell me, Michelle Rayner, who's actually running for Congress as well,
awesome.
had just a fantastic tweet that was like, people tell me I'm trying to fight a culture war because I'm LGBTQ. I'm just trying to balance a budget today. I'm just hoping we can fund something.
Literally.
I was like, she's right.
It's like priorities, folks. Come on. Like,
Right.
why do you
Yeah,
care how
exactly.
someone else lives their life? You know, like, don't you have other
Yeah, why
shit
do
to
you
worry
care
about?
this?
Your life has
This
to be
kid
hard
playing
enough,
sports.
you know? Yeah, no, it's wild. So upsetting to see that Don't Say Gay bill. And I saw there's a lot of like youth walkout, which was really great and so hopeful. It's just so unfortunate when shitty people are the ones in office making those decisions and they're just kind of running through, tearing up everything. So hopefully they'll get a lot of pushback and then they'll be able to see that no matter what, you can't do this. Like, you cannot erase someone's life. You can't erase someone's identity. And it's fucking irresponsible to diseducate people and not educate them to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
Also,
absolutely.
it's gonna, like, there's also a very real possibility that it's totally gonna backfire on them, right? Like Texas, the most, LGBTQ people, as Sarah mentioned, won their primaries. Florida, we just had the 4th ever LGBTQ mayor elected in Florida, literally the same day the Don't Say Gay bill passed. So folks are mobilized, on both sides. And that's what we're banking on.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. We have a candidate in Montana right now who decided to run for office after testifying against their anti-trans bill and going through the whole process, lobbying. The bill eventually passed, and she said, "I've had enough. It's time for me to be in this legislature."
Yeah, it's all about representation. I feel like a lot of this ignorance comes from people just not even knowing. It's so easy just to get fed misinformation and have ideas in your head that have actually no reality.
We say all the time, we have wonderful candidates who go through neighborhoods, they knock on doors. We have one candidate, elected official now in Virginia, that she was one of the first trans people that had ever knocked on that voter's door, and gave just this face to a name. And, people are fed information based on ignorance from various news sources, sometimes totally unintentional misinformation.
Right.
That, Virginia had gone through a bathroom bill, all kinds of horrible messaging around that, targeting trans folks, targeting trans kids. And they said, you're nothing like the demon we've been told that we should be worried about. You are nothing like that. And we've seen in polling after that, like, because voters have met her, because she's been representing this district, there's been a huge change in attitudes around trans people and around LGBTQ issues. So she's a huge example of what good can be done when LGBTQ people finally get into office and are allowed to live and are allowed to legislate and pass these bills that are actually beneficial to people. Like, she's tackled school lunches for kids
Yeah.
and erasing school kids' debt. And like parents remember that. Parents remember who was actually looking out for their
See,
children.
that's what parents are focused on, not about kids learning like gender identity and talking about their family and their lives in school. Huh.
Totally.
Crazy concept.
Surprise,
Who knew?
surprise.
Yeah, my God. Wild. All right. But let's talk about this anti-trans bill from Texas, because Governor Abbott is an evil asshat, my favorite way to describe people I disagree with and I think are stupid and do harm in the world. So what is this bill? Well, it's more of like an executive order almost.
Yeah. So he and another member of his cabinet, I want to say state attorney general. Now I'm forgetting.
Oh, I think the attorney general is like insane. He's terrifying. My
in
roommate
just
is
in
from
case.
Texas and she's my best friend. And I visited her a couple times and I'm like, I don't feel well here. This is terrifying.
Texas is a phenomenal state. We love our Texas elected
Yes.
officials. They keep us on our toes. I'll
Always.
say that
They sure
much.
do.
Always.
That they do. So basically the legislature, we have a lot of pro-equality leaders in the Texas legislature. We don't have any in the Senate right now, so we're working on that one. Basically, they couldn't get the bill passed in the legislature, so they just went around it, which really goes to show like why we need so many LGBTQ voices, so many more LGBTQ voices just at all levels of government. He was determined to make this happen, and so figured out a way to do it. Will it stand up in court? We don't know. Our good friends at the ACLU of Texas are doing a lot of phenomenal work on the ground to make sure people are mobilized, people are fighting back against these bills. They're working with parents, teachers, students, all the people impacted by this bill to make sure that if families are targeted by Abbott, that if they are criminally charged or if they are questioned by police or anything like that, that they have legal backing and can get access and support that they need. Because the point of this bill is to not even this bill, the point of this directive is to rip trans kids away from their families and to try to force them to be something they're not, or to try to force them to go into hiding or to leave the state, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is their home. Trans people should have the right to exist anywhere, despite who their governor is, without being harassed for it. So again, just kind of an absolute example of the length of time and effort that bigots will put into just trying to force LGBTQ people not to exist.
Yeah. I've said this before. Is like bigots' determination, admirable. What they're doing, not admirable. Very bad. Very, very bad.
It's a little bit like whack-a-mole sometimes.
Truly.
Once you get rid of Abbott, you got to worry about DeSantis. You get rid of DeSantis, you got to worry about South Dakota. You get rid of South Dakota. What's with the White House
It's like,
up
just
to?
stay in your hole.
Right.
Just stay down. So
What's coming up next?
yeah, literally. And for people who don't know, will you go into what the directive says?
Basically, what it says is that to provide gender-affirming healthcare, and provide can be you go to a doctor for it, or your parent seeks out a doctor for it, or you talk to a teacher about it, or, you talk to anyone about, I might be trans, I might be LGBTQ. That is now considered child abuse under Texas law. And I read this very quickly the other day, so I could be paraphrasing, but it's it's like you want to make your kid happy, you want to make them feel safe. That is now child abuse.
It's
That's
like
the opposite of
it's
child
like
abuse.
apples
That's
plus
not what that means.
oranges equals like blue. It makes no sense.
Right.
None.
Right. It's basically people who are not familiar with trans issues, willfully or otherwise, have decided that this is now child abuse. Could it be criminalized under law? I think in the legislature, they were trying to pass very strict penalties. I read somewhere very quickly the other day that the actual child abuse statutes in Texas are less harsh than these proposed changes would be. So it's just about being LGBTQ.
Right.
It's just about targeting trans kids. It's not about actually fixing any of the issues that Texas has. It happened conveniently, I think, right around the same time it was revealed that Abbott was encouraging companies to charge people more during the power grid outages for power.
What a
Either it's a
stand-up
redirect
guy.
or it's just
I
fun.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What a great
either it's a way to
man.
bury news, or it's just a fun way to, again, gin up a base before the midterms, and hope that people will be angry enough about trans lives and trans kids to head to the polls in November. and to hold on to power.
Right. So irritating. So let's also talk about some of these other big kind of anti-trans legislation, which is big one being sports and then also bathroom bills. What are these and what are kind of the big pieces of legislation about them?
So we are seeing a lot of conversation about trans youth in sports. There's a lot of, I think, willingness to, again, claim, I think one of the main talking points is we are defending cisgender women from the big scary trans man that might come try to take away her medals and to take away her access to sports, which again simply isn't true.
Yeah, I'm a cisgender woman, and I would love if someone took away like me being stressed about having to do anything.
Right? Like I have not played sports since high school.
Me either.
People are welcome to play them. I don't care.
Neither do
Go
I.
for it.
I'm like,
have fun, kids.
Truly, I still say this. I'm not competitive. I am competitive. I'm just got used to losing. Okay.
Right. And if someone's going to help me win,
go for it.
Godspeed.
Please.
But yeah, again, it's the same narrative you saw around bathroom bills where it was, oh, these big scary men pretending to be women are going to come into bathrooms and do terrible things to kids. It's all nonsense. There's no basis for it. It's just preying on these old fears, which you saw people come right out and say in Florida. DeSantis's press secretary, when talking about the bill, said anyone who supports this is a groomer. If you are advocating against this bill, you are for the grooming of children. On the 10th, we had Laura Ingraham's show say liberals are trying to groom children. Liberals are going to groom your kids. Democrats are the pro-grooming party. And it's just the absolutely ridiculous, same old stereotypes over and over again that have been used to discredit LGBTQ candidates, LGBTQ elected officials, any LGBTQ person who is just trying to go about their day.
Right.
And there's plenty of data to show that playing sports, participating in school activities helps kids feel accepted. It helps them feel normal and a part of their school. It can help with anxiety. It can help with depression. And then you look at someone like the governor of South Dakota, who when asked about why so many LGBTQ kids were depressed, said, I don't know. I just can't figure it out, right after she signed an anti-trans bill. These are the type of kids she could have helped just by being right. It's almost. It's like
laughably, yeah, truly. It's laughably stupid and offensive. You know,
it's truly you're so close to getting it. You're so close to knowing exactly what you did.
You're like, I don't know.
You just veer right away from it.
God.
It's just, it's like they see the point, they veer right around it.
Yeah, it's just their funny ways of being bigots. And ignorant. Is there a reason why all these anti-trans bills started exploding?
Yeah. Again, it's an election year.
Okay.
You're going to try anything, see what sticks. LGBTQ rights have been going forward in the last couple of years. Of course, the biggest example is marriage equality.
Right.
We're seeing more where LGBTQ people have equity in the state legislatures. We're seeing more pro-LGBTQ bills. So that's kind of the silver lining of this. It's really states where we don't have equitable representation or pro-equality forces just aren't in the majority. We see these bills really succeeding and passing. It's the attempt to throw something at a wall and see what sticks and then see what else they can get out of it. And again, we have a Supreme Court right now that is not particularly LGBTQ friendly.
Right.
There's a chance these bills end up in the judicial system. They make their way up the courts. They end up
what they did with
Supreme Court.
Abortion access and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
What they did with abortion access. I think what they're hoping to do with redistricting maps.
Right.
I think there's a lot of kind of bills that people look at and say, oh, that's really frivolous. There's no way that's going to stand, that are going to be driven up to the Supreme Court level, or at least try to.
I think that folks have felt this way for a long time, and they were empowered during the Trump administration to say it out loud. And not only was it said out loud in the open, I think that politicians have figured out that by saying these kind of things, they can get power for themselves. You know, Abbott, DeSantis, they want to continue to win. They're politicians. They want to continue to get more power, and they're seeing that this is an effective way to, get that power for them. So I think that part of this is based, also just politicians trying to win elections.
Yeah. And it feels like because a lot of people are so religious, or just the Bible really influences their daily life on a daily basis, it feels like just one of those super easy pinpoints that they can pick on that allows them to unite so many people that do rely on religion so frequently in their lives.
Yeah, and it's such an unfortunate co-opting, right? Because we also have candidates who are LGBTQ, who are religious, who are very active in their churches, who have the same faith that these conservative leaders have. It's just they don't delve into bigotry while doing it, right?
Which is honestly for people, not that hard, right? It is straight up not hard to not be a bigot.
Right. It's so easy to blame your hatred or your bigotry or your ignorance, whatever it is, on something else, whether it be the Bible or, your religious affiliation or how you grew up or, the society you grew up in. But, I went through 12 years of Catholic school myself. We have a duty to be better than what we grew up with.
Right.
And to, even if you learn those stereotypes growing up, even if you grow up in that type of household or that type of community, it's our job to be better than where we came from and to try to leave the world a much better place than we found it.
Totally.
So to hold on to those beliefs, to blame your hatred on the Bible, or again, whatever it could be, people use all kinds of things, I think, to justify their logic on things. It's just such nonsense, because that's not the Jesus I grew up with. And it's not, I think, the Jesus a lot of people grew up with. Right. It's just a very different interpretation, one that is very wrong.
Totally.
But I'm sure they would say the same thing about me.
Absolutely. It's like I grew up with Moses, and Moses is my Jesus. And, and I grew up in Chicago in I think they now call it like Rainbow Road or something, but was Boys Town, which is like great time, predominantly LGBTQ neighborhood. Like I remember going to drag queen car washes when I was 11, and my parents were just like,
we're a lot of fun. Like, they should
so
come hang
much
out with
fun.
us.
Literally.
I
think so. Honestly, I think these bigots are just unhappy, and they're like, wait, those people seem like they're having a lot of fun, and now they just hate it,
Right? Yeah, go to one drag brunch. You'll change your mind.
Exactly. I know my birthday's in 10 days, and we're going to a drag brunch for my birthday. It's like, what better way to have fun, But I think it's just like people have no exposure, and they've just been fed so much hatred, and they're just, and it's just so easy to unite behind hatred, which is so, so fucking unfortunate, because it's so much easier to not hate people or things,
Yeah.
Yeah. I say all the time, it must be exhausting. It must be exhausting.
Truly.
Yeah.
You gotta wake up every morning and you're just pissed. Like,
are you kidding? I can't have one bad day. I'm like, I need a rest. Okay. I can't do it.
Yeah,
it's
you need your rest.
Try being nice.
Totally. But
Emily, what you mentioned though about exposure is so true. And I think that for me is like one of the biggest issues with these bills, because it's not just you don't believe we should have rights. It's that you don't believe we should exist. And you don't believe we should exist in some of the most important institutions, healthcare, schools. Like, those are really foundational, important institutions for our country. And for the fact that it's not even that you just don't believe, like marriage equality, like, it's not that you don't believe we should get married. It's that you just don't believe we fundamentally should exist in these spaces. And I'll talk personally. I grew up not knowing about, gay people for most of my childhood. And, that has effects. And what I would hate is for kids to now have to go through schools and not be exposed to this, exposed to LGBTQ people. And then they're just, how are you ever going to be able to put a face to this? It's so much easier to other someone if you never have to personalize them. And so that's the biggest thing for me. I just can see this having generational ripples.
Absolutely.
Which is scary.
No, it's terrifying. And it feels like the reason why a lot of these bills are coming out is that it's the first time that I think a lot of older generations are really having to face the fact that a lot of people are so different and just like living their lives, and they're nervous and scared about it. And they don't realize that this is such a positive thing, and that people feel much safer and much more comfortable to be their authentic selves. And it feels like that's one of the reasons. It's like you said, it's so easy to other someone.
Yeah, there was, to your point, there was recent polling from Gallup that says 7.1% of people now identify as LGBTQ.
Wow.
As the generations go on, younger people just feel hopefully safer coming out. But more and more people are coming out. You definitely saw a big jump after COVID and after people sitting at home, thinking about themselves, thinking about their gender, their identity, their sexuality. We saw a huge jump in the first year after COVID. I think it jumped to 6.9. We're at 7.1 now. The number just keeps going up. More and more people are identifying as LGBTQ. And that makes the representation gap even harder, because that means we have even more people to elect to make sure. But at the same time, like, what a wonderful problem to have. And especially, like, I think more people are coming out as trans, more people are coming out as bisexual, and they're finding the safe spaces despite all this, despite these governors, despite these bills, they're finding safe spaces to come out in.
Yeah. And
that's a great thing.
Which is really awesome. Yeah.
Safe spaces and community. I think not only, in the city that you may live in, but also during COVID, I think we all really figured out how to use technology as a way to build relationships in community in a way that maybe we didn't before as much, and I think that that's also another silver lining here, is that, a lot of folks are feeling comfortable to build those communities.
Which is great. And so I think this is really important to talk about, is that, I personally grew up with a very strong lesbian, gay, and bi community in my life. My uncle's gay. Like, it was never something that was ever even like discussed or questioned. Like, him and his husband had been together for 30 something years. Like, it was just never a concept, But growing up, I had never really met someone who identified as trans or anything like that. And I feel for a lot of cis people, the whole concept of transgender is very different. And I would love to get into why this dialogue surrounding gender affirming care and trusting people and whatnot is so important, and why the bills about trans people like not being allowed to use the bathroom they identify with, or by considering gender affirming care for youth, child abuse is so dangerous and so ignorant, and why gender affirming care and supporting trans people is so important. I would love to dive into that.
I think, as Albert said, it's just making sure people feel seen, because the worst thing you can do to somebody is erase them. And that's what these bills are trying to do, to really erase people and demonize them, again, as this horrible other. So before kids can even think to themselves, oh, I don't feel comfortable in the clothes I'm putting on every day. I don't feel comfortable with makeup. People say, oh, I'm a tomboy, maybe transition later in life. I certainly don't want to speak for anybody, but we live in a society and grew up in a society that is based around ways of codifying people. The biggest ones being race and gender. Those are I think, two of the easiest ways to look at someone and say, this is how I relate to you. This is how you're different. So when someone defies those stereotypes or exists as a non-binary person, as a gender non-confirming person, it can be really frightening to someone who hasn't wrapped their head around that, and frightening in the way of, like, not actually frightening. No one's going to attack you. No one's going to yell at you. No one's going to scream at you. But I think there's something about the human brain that says, I don't quite know what to do with you.
Right.
So therefore, it's an other, it's bad, right? And we grow up in a society that says, the Disney princess ends up with, and I don't mean to pick on Disney there, despite the headlines they're generating, but we definitely grow up with movies and rom-coms where the girl ends up with the boy, and that's the happy ending, and that's what we see. It's never they end up with a trans man. It's never they end up with a trans woman. It's only a recent thing that we're seeing lesbians on TV even, or the gay men even are such a rarity even now today, even though they're the biggest group we probably see. So we definitely, again, we live in a society, the dolls you play with when you're growing up, boys don't play with dolls. That's a huge thing. So these are just concepts that are reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And we're kind of, as Albert said earlier, no one teaches you to question heterosexuality,
Right.
but we're taught constantly to question, oh, why isn't she with a man, or why don't they have a gender? We're taught to question these things
Right.
and wonder about them and worry about them when there really is nothing to worry about, you know? So it's very like, it's just this careful line, I think, that so many people walk, again, when they don't have that lived experience, or they haven't encountered someone, or they're just dealing with disinformation and these big stereotypes that people try to promote. But then you actually come across someone who's trans, or someone who's non-binary, someone who's queer, someone who's bisexual, someone who's LGBTQ in general, and you say to yourself, again, this isn't the demon I've been presented with. This isn't the big scary villain. This isn't someone trying to treat me as a predator or groom my child or whatever ridiculous thing that's going to come out next week. That's like, oh, LGBTQ people are all ghosts or something. Like, you just...
Casper, no!
Right. Like, Casper is a gender non-conforming icon,
Yes.
I think. You have to really find yourself, I think, when you're LGBTQ, because we live in a society that is hell-bent on putting people in boxes.
Totally.
And so to break out of that, I think it's so brave for people to do it, to continue doing it, to expose themselves in that way, and to try to continue doing so in a world that just keeps telling them you have to be this or you have to be that.
Totally.
It's just that bravery that that people keep having a problem with. How dare these trans people be out? How dare these non-binary people live this way? How dare these queer people live this way? And it's just, again, if it's ignorance, if it's straight hatred, there are certain people in the world that just cannot handle it, to their own detriment, really.
Yeah.
And one thing I will add is that, to Sarah's point, it's totally fundamentally about being seen. And then there's also just such an important safety component to this as well. If politicians are emboldened and passing anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ laws, then people on the ground are going to feel emboldened to bully trans people, to not only, in schools, but when they're trying to vote on election day. We've seen that happen. And then also, if you don't have access to this critical gender affirming healthcare, there's a huge mental toll for trans people. And that needs to be talked about, and that needs to be talked about in, when we're talking about this legislation, because it's not just about, being able to, use the bathroom that you want. This healthcare really is about like being who you are, and trans people, suffer at higher rates of depression, suicide rates, and murder rates too. And like that is going to increase if legislatures pass anti-trans laws. Like that is going to happen. And, people need to reckon with that morally.
To add a bit more to depression to that, honestly, the
Take
same
a
year,
drink.
2020,
Yeah. Cheers.
right? In 2021, when a record number of anti-trans bills passed, a record number of Black trans women were killed throughout the country, throughout the world. And it's just, to Albert's point, this really horrible dichotomy of bigots at the top feel emboldened by Trump, by these governors, by the legislatures, and they take that action to the ground. You see it in anti-Asian language as well, around anti-Asian hate crimes rising. Like, people take the permission of it to just act as badly as possible. And it's worth noting too, in that we have only elected a handful of out Black trans people in the entire US. It was only last year that we elected the first non-binary state legislator in the United States. In 2017, we elected two of the first out Black trans people in the U.S. To the Minneapolis City Council, I believe, Andrew Jenkins and Philippe Cunningham. So severe underrepresentation. And again, that extends to politics. It extends to media.
Right.
So not having visibility, not having representation is just, it can be absolutely deadly.
Absolutely. Yeah, deadly for the person themselves and for people feeling emboldened to harm onto others, because there's so many studies that show that affirming a child's gender, how they see fit and how they choose to express themselves, is life-saving. truly.
Yeah.
And it's something that I can never wrap my head around because I'm like, why do people care that much? I don't think they understand how hard it is for someone to go against the grain. Why would someone do something that is so difficult in society of being accepted for who they are? You know, it's like for all these bigots who are saying like, they're like harming youth or like they're harming blah, 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 blah. Like all this stupid shit. It's like, you don't understand the strength that it takes for someone to live their authentic selves. Like, why on earth would someone make this decision lightly? Or like not, why would it not be who they are, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know those, there's like some kind of machine that like simulates contractions to like, so that your partner has empathy. Can we make a machine to like, hey, you can be gay for a day and like, and come out, do that and tell me it's a choice. You know what I mean? Like, come on, are you serious? Or, you know, the sports bans are just, there's no common sense involved because if for their version to be true, it would have to be someone who would come out as trans, go through, you know, just, it would be a huge undertaking just to get a little bit ahead in one race. Like that makes no sense, 0 sense. So
like
we need
no
to
one
invent
likes
that.
Sports that well. I can't say that. I mean, there's like Olympics and stuff, but like personally speaking, I'm like, who likes sports that much?
Not I.
Like, cannot relate. It's, and also, there's so many also like cis athletes that were like, truly, I take steroids to help with this. Like, tell me that's different. You know, it's just people it's people being stupid. Just so many stupid people. Anyways. How can
you can apply that to a lot of things?
You can apply that to so much.
So much. Oh my god! I just need like one of those buttons, and I'm like stupid, bad. You know,
it would break after a day. So.
Like maybe like 60 minutes. I guess just like kind of the real question is, it's like, how can we fight back? How can we protect LGBTQ people and youth and ensure that they get the care that they need, that they feel seen, they get that seat at the table, and that they get to live their authentic lives to the best possible way? How do we do this?
Great question. And I'm sure we were talking about this earlier. There's so much that it's our job to elect LGBTQ candidates, and we still hit the end of the day and go, God, there's so much more I wish I could have done. It's a never ending process. So first and foremost, take care of yourself. If you have LGBTQ friends, if you are LGBTQ, check on your community, check on your friends, check on your family. Just make sure everybody's okay. It's a really tough time right now. And it can feel like there's a lot of hate on all sides. Usually what I do when I feel that way, we get a really nice email from an elected official today, just thanking us for the work we're doing, thanking us for everything we do to help elect people. And I just thought to myself, this is why we do this work. So check in on your friends, tell them nice things, let them know that they're loved, that they're included, that they are valued, because there are so many people trying to tell them they're not. So on a practical sense, that's one thing you can do. Always call your legislatures. If you live in one of these states, in Florida, in Texas, in Alabama, in Idaho, in Tennessee, if there is somebody in your state legislature that's trying to pass an anti-trans bill, call your city council, call that state representative, call your state representative, your state senator, and let them know you are not about it. Just tell them immediately not to vote for that. Call your governor, call your senators, call your congresspeople, call everybody that you can think of. Call your local dog catcher and just tell them you are not about that life. Even if you don't have kids, if you're a kid yourself, call your school board. Just make a big list. Call everybody. Send them emails. Tweet at them. Just let people know that you are not pleased with what they're doing. You want to see actual legislation. Not this bullshit targeting trans people. I don't know if I can swear. Not this nonsense.
We are very pro swearing on this podcast.
You know what? We've sworn a couple times. And then never, ever forget, the best thing you can do is try to vote against these people. Even if you live in a gerrymandered district, or you live, again, you might live in a gerrymandered congressional district. Maybe you have a chance at the state ledge level. Maybe you can get a new state senator, and that would make all the difference. You can definitely make an impact at the city council, because the further down the ballot you go, the less votes you need to actually make a difference there. One of our city council candidates, I think, won by like 5 votes last year.
Oh my God.
That's-
Every
yeah,
vote matters,
it's a huge
folks.
difference.
100%.
It's a huge
vote.
difference. So never ever forget to vote. Update your registration. If you live in a state, we had elections in Texas recently where people were randomly unregistered.
Oh.
No clear reason why.
Wonder why.
No clear reason why. Yeah. You had people posting their ballots on Twitter where they got this big official looking letter that said, check here to undo your registration. So if you register to vote, if you're able to vote, please do so. Keep fighting to do so if you're on the ground doing so, and just keep checking your voter registration, because someone may try to take it away from you for absolutely no reason. There are always examples of people who are taken off the voting rolls because they changed an address, or because, you know, they went through some random process or received something in the mail that took them off, or they were just taken off for no reason. So keep checking on that. Definitely get involved with campaigns. If you're even remotely outgoing, you can talk to voters. You can talk to other voters. You can change their minds. There's probably an LGBTQ candidate in your area. We have, again, a huge list of 200 endorsed candidates. You can find them at LGBTQVictoryFund.org, along with the rest of the work that we're doing, and see who's running in your area, and check out people's platforms. If they're anti-LGBTQ, don't campaign for them.
Don't do that.
I humbly ask.
No good. No thank you.
Definitely. And again, yeah, definitely don't campaign for them. Campaign for the other person who's pro-equality. And again, get involved in city council races. Get involved in your school boards. Check out your state and local races, because again, it's going to be a handful of votes, maybe thousands of votes, probably less, that decide those races, and help kind of get those chambers back in order. And even if your state legislature is passing anti-LGBTQ legislation, your city council can stand against it. Your mayor can stand against it. There are plenty of things you can do to make sure that, despite the nonsense passing at the state or the congressional level, that like there are lots of ways to fight back and make sure that your local government actually represents you. And your local government is also going to do a lot of work that you care about. They make sure your trash gets picked up. They figure out the budget for your town. So they're doing a lot of really valuable work. And we tend to forget about those races just because they're kind of, you know, that they're not the big sexy Senate races or the presidential campaign, but
Sexy Senate.
there's a lot.
The hot
The
house.
sexy Senate. If
I don't
you
know,
were going
sometimes.
to use one word, one word to describe the U.S. Senate, it would definitely be sexy.
Without a doubt. Oh my God. Mitch
they're
McConnell, those
known.
chins. Oh.
He gets it.
Oh.
He gets it. He
Oh my
knows.
God. Love me a turtle.
He's definitely a man. I'll say that. Not a reptile at all. And then always speak out on social media as well. Again, we had fantastic examples of the kids in Florida organizing these massive walkouts around
so
the Don't
awesome
Say Gay
to
bill.
see.
It was
So
great.
cool.
It was
so cool.
so cool.
Way to go, Gen Z.
Yes.
Way to fucking
Love to
do
see
it. Good job, guys.
Incredible.
And I think their TikTok has 1 million followers.
Yep.
They're on Instagram. They're on Twitter.
It's great.
Good for them. So, you know, if you can't write somebody a letter, you can tweet at them. And you might just be tweeting at their staffer or their social media person, but you're also
Or their
letting
press
the
secretary.
Yes.
or you're tweeting at Albert.
Yes. You're literally tweeting at Albert.
You're tweeting at our social media person named Jared. You're tweeting at Albert.
Yeah, tweet us nice things.
Tweet us nice things. Say
called
nice things to us on the
allyship.
internet.
Yes.
At Victory Fund is all our social media handles. Tweet nice things at us. But, you know, we can clearly see that organizing is online. It has been for a while. You can find volunteers. You can find other people that are passionate. And you might just be telling the LGBTQ people that follow you, hey, I'm on your team. And again, that's invaluable. That's so great
Totally.
for people to see.
Absolutely. We just need to make sure that people feel safe to be their authentic selves, you know? And
100%.
I had an internship on the Hill once, and I was one of those people that answers the phone.
Ooh.
I know. Which should terrify
God bless.
everyone that someone like me was the initial first response to a United States senator. However, you know, like annoy. General policy is you have to pick up the phone, you have to have a conversation, and make your voice heard, you know, reach out to all those people, let them know, like, listen, I don't support this type of bigotry. This is doing so much more harm. Just be loud, you know, support people.
Absolutely.
Support people to be themselves.
Absolutely.
Because why else, like, what the fuck do you care however someone decides to live their life, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. If people can get organized around mask mandates and pretending they don't like having a piece of cloth on their face, you can get organized around this. It's not hard.
It's so easy.
You and 6 friends can go to your city council meeting. You too can cause a ruckus.
Yes.
And you should.
Yeah. You know, have some fun beforehand. Go out for drinks and then go be like, listen, y'all stupid. And it'll be a fun night out, you know?
Yeah, right. No longer are we going to brunch and not protesting. No. We are going to brunch and then we are protesting. Right? We are doing
I love
both.
it. In that order.
100%.
Right? It's 2022. You too can have it all. You can brunch, you can protest.
Yes, there can be deals. You know, you get your like brunch, your mimosa, and then you go to your protest, and it's all included for $40. You know, it's perfect.
You let the government know.
100%. But
yeah. One thing I will add, you know, in terms of like how to stand up and fight this bigotry, you know, if you see your city council doesn't represent, you know, your community and your, you know, who you are, if you see your, you know, state legislature, you know, you should seriously consider running yourself. You know, I think there's always going to, you know, you always think, oh, it could never be me. You know, I'm not, you know, a politician. And like, that's what we need. You know, to get equitable representation, we need to elect over 35,000 more LGBTQ people to elected office in the United States. So like, just take a minute, breathe. We just hit 1,000 last year, and we need to elect 35,000 more.
All right.
And so like, we need you to run for office, and Victory will be there to support you, but we need more folks to run. So, you know, that's something I think that Sarah and I and everyone at Victory, you know, is really excited about. We see people, you know, school kids walking out in Florida, and in them we see, you know, activists willing to make their voices heard, stand up, say this is wrong. And hopefully, I'm sure some of them are going to run for office and then be that voice, you know, in those critical decision-making rooms too. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Lots
on our
a good note to end on, you know.
Yes, perfect.
I was going to say, on our institute side, we have all kinds of training programs. We travel around the country. We train people in different states.
Yep.
We have leadership summits, which are if you're questioning. If you have questions about how to run, definitely reach out. We're happy to connect you with people. And like Albert said, if you are somebody on the ground right now who's fighting back that you don't know if you can, you know, stop the bill from being passed, you should be in the legislature. You should be in the city council. You should be in these seats, and you should be the one stopping it there.
Absolutely.
We need more voices.
Yeah. Oh, so PSA to all the LGBTQ people listening to this, run for office, and all the people that are supportive of LGBTQ people, support them and let them live their best authentic selves, you know? And stop people from trying to ruin people's happiness. All right. And those are my 2 cents. And that's, I feel like, just general baseline stuff, you know? Who knew it would be so hard to just let people, I mean,
So
it could not be easier. Just let people be happy, bro. Like, it's so easy. Sarah, Albert, it's been so lovely to have the both of you. Do you have any other comments? Anything else you would like for people to know?
Again, LGBTQVictoryFund.org. LGBTQ Victory Institute. Check us out. If you are thinking about running for office, if you're an LGBTQ person already running for office out there in the world, if you're looking for people to endorse you, definitely check us out. Again, our 3 endorsement criteria: you got to be LGBTQ, you got to be pro-choice, and you got to be pro-trans. If you can't hit that bar, that's too bad. But everybody else, we want to hear from you.
I love it. Albert, anything else?
I think that there's so much negativity, but at the same time, there's so much to look forward to. You know, beyond just folks running for office, you know, for me, the thing that I'm most excited about is people willing to get involved. And that's, you know, that's the backbone of our democracy. And that's really exciting. So I'm excited for, you know, all Americans, and especially the younger folks who are willing to, you know, get in the ring, fight for their rights, but also the rights of their neighbors. So lots to look forward to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the future generation is going to do well. I'm pumped.
Fingers crossed.
I know. Hoping. So hard. But Thank you guys so much for being on this podcast. It has been such a wonderful, lovely conversation. And I'm your host, Emily Gross. This has been another wonderful episode of Bureaucracy, and we'll be back next week.